Brett Kavanaugh is back in the news after the New York Times published excerpts from a new book that details some of the sexual assault allegations against him. The excerpt from The Education of Brett Kavanaugh, an Investigation, was written by Times reporters Robin Hogerben and Kate Kelly, and they revisit an allegation that was raised during the Supreme Court Justice's confirmation process in 2018. Some of you may have remembered this allegation. This is not an allegation by Dr. Christine Blasey Ford, but rather a former Yale classmate of his named Deborah Ramirez. Now, Deborah Ramirez detailed a party that she went to. Kavanaugh was there, and he allegedly did something pretty graphic that made her incredibly uncomfortable. During the winter of her freshman year, a drunken dormitory party unsettled her deeply. She and some classmates had been drinking heavily when she says a freshman named Brett Kavanaugh pulled down his pants and thrust his penis at her, prompting her to swat it away and inadvertently touched it. Some of the onlookers who had been passing around a fake penis earlier in the evening laughed. Now, Deborah Ramirez was quoted as saying, "I had gone through high school, I'm a good girl, and now in one evening it was all wiped away." So this has caused a firestorm. There have been different reactions. Of course, Donald Trump is angry about this, and he believes that the Department of Justice needs to protect Brett Kavanaugh, even though that's not the job that the Department of Justice is supposed to do. Also, according to the Times reporting, by preying upon her in this way, Deborah Ramirez added, "Kavanaugh and his friends made it clear I'm not smart." And Ramirez didn't have this upbringing that was incredibly affluent. Her parents did well. She was studious. She was really hardworking, and she made her way. She worked her way to Yale, and she felt as though no one really respected her. She was different. There were very few minorities at Yale in the 1980s, and so this felt as if it was an attack on her and who she was as a person. And it's obviously stayed with her throughout the years because she details it even today.
So Deborah Ramirez's story that we just recounted for you, most of that was already public record when Kavanaugh was up for a vote. The new parts of this story are how many people who have confirmed it, and then try to reach out to the FBI and what kind of a sham investigation that week that FBI looked into it was. So along those lines, let me read the next couple of quotes for you guys from the New York Times. During his Senate testimony, Kavanaugh said that if the incident Ramirez described had occurred, it would have been, quote, the talk of the campus. Our reporting suggests that it was. Now, let me be clear about this. They wrote a book about this, that these are the excerpts of the book. They are New York Times reporters, but this was printed in the opinion section, okay? So now the most relevant part is right here. They say at least 7 people, including Ramirez's mother, heard about the Yale incident long before Kavanaugh was a federal judge. 2 of those people were classmates who learned of it just days after the party occurred, suggesting that it was discussed among students at the time. So apparently it was a bit of the talk of campus. And so now the FBI might have been able to uncover that if they were allowed to, if they had enough time and ability to. But apparently their investigation was hemmed in significantly. And so a very important question arises that's beyond even what should happen to Kavanaugh, which is who told the FBI to do a very limited investigation and would not allow them to talk to witnesses? That's a very important question.
So I want to go back to that FBI investigation and recount how it went down. Because remember, the Republican Party gave the FBI a maximum of 1 week to do this investigation, to conduct this investigation. And they didn't even take the full week. I remember the investigation wrapped up just short of 1 week. And it was abundantly clear that individuals who should have been interviewed as part of this investigation were not interviewed. To give you more details, in regard to the information that was given to the FBI and what the FBI just didn't look into. According to the New York Times story, Ramirez's legal team gave the FBI a list of 25 individuals who may have had corroborating evidence, but the Bureau, in its supplemental background investigation, interviewed none of them, though we learned many of these potential witnesses tried in vain to reach the FBI on their own. And I just remember the day the FBI wrapped their investigation. And I remember feeling sick to my stomach because I knew it was a sham. I knew that they didn't really do much. They interviewed a few people related to Dr. Ford, but it just didn't seem real. An investigation like that doesn't take, first of all, a week. It should take longer than that. And Republicans always get what they want because Democrats aren't gonna fight. I mean, they didn't, in my opinion, they didn't fight hard enough. They just allowed Republicans to take hold of this investigation, really limit the scope, and now we have a Supreme Court justice who might be a sexual predator, or at least previously.
Yeah, so I want to actually go to Ryan Grimm's reporting. He's the Washington bureau chief for The Intercept and is also a TYT contributor. In his book, We've Got People, he talks about both the things that Anna just mentioned. First of all, a really interesting part of it was that two activists wound up pressuring Jeff Flake in an elevator, if you remember that scene, to get him to not immediately confirm Kavanaugh. But Flake then, after that incident, quickly came up with this new idea, which he then surprised everyone with and said the FBI should do an investigation for a week so we're more sure. It seemed to be a positive development. And I don't know what Flake's intent was there. Maybe he did intend for a real investigation, but it was immediately taken over by the Republican apparatchiks, who then turned it into a sham investigation. So when you have 25 witnesses that come forward and say, or their legal team gives you 25 witnesses, and others come forward and say, please interview me, I know what happened. And the FBI says, no, we're not allowed to talk to you. Well, okay, then who made that decision that you're not allowed to talk to them?
Yeah, and it's not an investigation. Let's keep it real.
That's not a real investigation.
If you're looking into possible sexual assault or possible rape that a Supreme Court nominee might have committed in the past, you need to interview as many people as possible who are coming forward with allegations. I mean, it's so frustrating and infuriating that this is the way that it ended up. And this is how it works in politics. Republicans always get what they want because they're willing to, pull whatever trick they can to get it.
Yeah, and so ironically, it might have actually helped Kavanaugh. Well, look, the FBI investigated and they cleared him, so he must be fine. When in reality, it of course was not a real investigation, as we now know and have learned. Okay, now the second part of it is how did the Democrats react? And both in this report by the New York Times and also in Ryan Grimm's reporting, several Democrats, most notably Dianne Feinstein, who got the original letter from Christine Blasey Ford, they didn't want to look into it. They thought it might hurt Democrats' chances electorally, and so they wanted to basically cover it up. And
yeah, because bending to the will of the Republican Party works out real well for you politically, right? I mean,
that's all they do.
To be quite honest with you, I feel embarrassed to be in any way associated to the Democratic Party as a Democratic voter, right? If this is what Democrats are about, and honestly, for the past few decades, this is what they're about, it's embarrassing. They're not fighters, they're pathetic, and they allowed this to happen. I know that even if Democrats had the majority in the House and the Senate, okay, they would be able to fight aggressively enough. Republicans would be able to fight aggressively enough to still get what they wanted.
Yeah, and by the way, I mentioned Ryan's reporting on this because he's the one who originally broke the first story about Christine Blasey Ford. He didn't have the name yet, but he did unbelievable report, excellent reporting. I interviewed him about it. You should check it out on The Conversation. And how he got it confirmed that there was a woman out there with allegations. If it wasn't for Ryan in the first place, it appears Dianne Feinstein would have never brought it forward. It's unbelievable how complicit they are with the Republicans. Now, the final piece of this from the New York Times story is about Max Stier. So let's go to that. A classmate, Max Stier, saw Kavanaugh with his pants down at a different drunken dorm party where friends pushed his penis into the hand of a female student. Stier, who runs a nonprofit organization in Washington, notified senators and the FBI about his account, but the FBI did not investigate and Stier has declined to discuss it publicly. Now, an important clarification on that, the New York Times later put in an editor's note that the woman who was apparently involved in that incident has not talked to the New York Times or the writers of this book and says that she cannot recall that, okay? So that's important for you to know, but if Stier is right about that, Well, that's the second time that Kavanaugh would have done this. This is not related to the Ramirez, but would back up the Ramirez story as another time that he did it.
Yeah, and so right now there are members of the right, including Donald Trump, who are claiming that this entire New York Times investigation and this entire book is nothing more than a witch hunt because one of the women who might have allegedly been involved in another case where Kavanaugh allegedly revealed himself doesn't remember, doesn't recall it, right? So that doesn't prove anything. That doesn't mean that it absolutely didn't happen. It doesn't mean that it absolutely did happen. It means that she can't remember. But Deborah Ramirez details what allegedly happened to her, from beginning to end. And by the way, I can't think of any woman who would be dumb enough to make this up and go out in the public to deal with the type of vicious and horrendous behavior that we see from members of the right. The nonstop death threats, Donald Trump mocking sexual assault victims during campaign rally events. I mean, it's a horrible way to be out there in the public. I just think there should have been a full investigation because to me, I don't know if Brett Kavanaugh's innocent. I don't know. So yeah, I think you're right in that Republicans can point to a sham investigation and say, see, they did an investigation, he's innocent. But for people who actually know the details of the story, no, he's not. We don't know for sure. That wasn't a real investigation, and I'm always gonna look at him as someone who could potentially be a sexual predator.
Okay, and the last thing about this is Abby Huntsman then went on The View and said, you see, the New York Times is gonna get Donald Trump reelected. I can't stand that. It drives me crazy because they say, well, since the New York Times had to put in the editor's note at the end and not correct, but clarify something that was in that article, they're like, well, see, then it's gonna show that everything's fake news. No, it doesn't. It shows that they care to clarify and get things right afterwards, even if their original story had even a slight issue. On the other hand, you have Donald Trump, who tells lies at an astounding and record-breaking rate. So when people on TV go, well, the New York Times clarified a small part of the story and they equate it to what Donald Trump does and then say, see, they're gonna get Trump elected, they're helping Donald Trump and the Republican Party by doing a false equivalency. And so they are not the same thing. And by the way, Trump supporters who hate the New York Times and think that it's fake news, they're gonna vote for Trump anyway. So stop with this idiocy of like, oh, somebody was on the fence. They couldn't tell if Trump's a liar or not. And the New York Times has to do a slight clarification. Oh, that's it, I'm voting for Trump. Now they were gonna vote for Trump anyway.
Don't let anyone on the right, anyone in the media make you think that the problem here is the New York Times. The New York Times is not the problem. There are two groups of people that are the problem. The Republican Party that went out of its way to cover up for Brett Kavanaugh and prevent a real investigation from happening, and the FBI, which refused to actually interview individuals that it should have interviewed when it came to this case. Those are the bad guys. Those are the ones we should be focusing on. I'm tired of Republicans taking hold of every narrative and the media just runs with it. No, I'm not gonna let that happen. We need to tell the truth. The New York Times is not in the wrong here, period.
I'm sorry, I gotta add one more thing, which is that the Republicans and Donald Trump cry about, oh my God, when the FBI came after Donald Trump, they politicized the FBI, Andrew McCabe and James Comey and all those guys. Now they turn around and in this case look like they politicized the FBI, told them what not to investigate.
What does the FBI really do, really?
No, the FBI does good work.
Do they though? Do they?
No, they've stopped a lot of domestic terrorism cases, et cetera. So it's a mixed bag. So we report the good, the bad, et cetera. And then
I love their limited scope investigations when it involves anyone on the right, whether it be Donald Trump or Brett Kavanaugh, any high level Republican figure, conservative figure, limited scope, limited scope. Yeah. Are there investigations limited in scope when they're investigating other individuals? I mean, how many stories have we done about the FBI going after some random private citizen who posted rap lyrics on Facebook?
Yeah,
Come on.
And even in this case, Donald Trump says the Justice Department should protect Kavanaugh. So while pretending that the Justice Department and the FBI politicized the Trump investigation, which they most clearly did not, it's based on overwhelming evidence, they turn around and brazenly say in public, we should politicize the Justice Department and the FBI to suit our own political purposes. There is no false equivalency here. One side loves to politicize those organizations and cover up the reality, and the other side, in the case of the media, reports the reality here. 2 easy ways to follow the Young Turks. One is hit the subscribe button down below, then you're a TYT subscriber, and second is ring the bell. And when you do that on YouTube, you're notified of our videos.